Alright, so today we're going to be discussing the origins and colonial economy and politics of New Spain. But first, we need to learn some things about Spain during the 15th century. At the beginning of the 15th century, Spain was a collection of two small kingdoms, the Muslim Sultanate of Granada to the south, and the Kingdom of Navarra to the north, as well as two other big kingdoms, Aragon and Castile. Near the end of the century, Queen Isabel of Castile and Fernando of Aragon got married, essentially unifying their two big kingdoms into what territory is now considered to be Spain. A unified Spain, stronger than ever, was able to finish off the Reconquista by banishing the last of the Moors from the European continent and looking to replicate the mercantile success of their Portuguese neighbors. The Kingdom of Castile and Aragon seeks to explore new trading routes to the Far East. This is where a guy named Christopher Columbus comes into play. He was a very famous Italian explorer, and he sought to explore a new trading route to East Asia, going west across the Atlantic Ocean. Based on his belief that the Earth was round, he figured that he could perhaps reach India crossing the Atlantic, avoiding having to deal with the Portuguese route around Africa and the Ottoman dominated land route through the Middle East. He sought financing from the Catholic monarchs of Castile, and they accepted it. They were eager to risk it, and they proceeded to provide Columbus with resources to explore this new route in the name of Spain. It was then that a 6 month journey was set forth. Columbus sailed off of Spain in a small fleet of three ships, which were called the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. These ships landed on an island in the Caribbean, which they would call San Salvador. Columbus's brother would then found the oldest European city in the continent, Santo Domingo, in 1496. And the Spanish would also discover the land of Cuba, the island of Cuba, which they would transform into their main hub of civilization and colonization. Now, there was a Spanish conqueror named Hernan Cortes. He had heard rumors about a great civilization to the west in the mainland. And in 1519, he and a bunch of other Spaniards sailed off the coast of Cuba and then landed at the coast of Yucatan in Mexico, where he encountered countless native tribes and peoples. He made his way to the highlands of central Mexico, and that's where he would found Tenochtitlan, a big, massive Aztec city. It was a big metropolis made of man-made canals, and it was built in the middle of a lake. It was Lake Texcoco, and the Spaniards would be cautiously welcomed by Aztec Emperor Moctezuma II, which would perceive them to be as gods, though they would also be scared of them. The Spanish were also incredibly amazed by the sheer amount of gold and riches of the Aztec people. So much so that Cortes and his crew would later try to arrest Moctezuma to basically just claim all those riches and the city itself for Spain. But he would be expelled away from the city, and what in an event that was called La Noche Triste in Spanish history. Though he was still hell bent on taking Tenochtitlan and its riches for Spain, so he would begin to plan a siege, which was difficult due to simply being like massively outnumbered by the Aztecs. But there was one unexpected solution to this. They would basically pact with native peoples of Mexico who were rivals of the Aztecs, and the most important of these tribes were the Tlaxcalans and the Texcoco, who would provide thousands of warriors to help siege Tenochtitlan. The siege of Tenochtitlan would begin in around May or July of 1521. It was a really violent battle that lasted for weeks. Most of the city's population would succumb to either the European diseases or combat. And by August of that year, Cuauhtemoc, who was the last Aztec emperor, would be captured and tortured by the Spanish, which signified that the Aztec Empire had officially ended. The Spanish would found a new metropolis atop the ruins of the old one, Mexico City. Many of the European buildings were straight up made out of the rocks reused from the Aztec temples and buildings. For example, the Catedral Metropolitana. It was built from the stones of the Templo Mayor, which was the biggest Aztec temple. Here's the facade of the church. It's pretty beautiful and detailed. And uh, the reusing of the stones to me kind of symbolized the transition from a pagan city to a Christian city. Mexico City would be the capital of the Viceroyalty of New Spain, which would be founded in 1535. And the Spanish basically claimed all of the land north of Panama. At first, it would only be the lands of Central America and the lower half of Mexico, but uh, they would claim most of the land in the United States, the territory of Louisiana and South Florida, and the Western United States. Also, the Spanish possessions in the Caribbean would also fall under new Spanish jurisdiction, as well as the Philippines. All of that land was governed by a viceroy, who was a representative of the King of Spain, who at the time was Charles V, the Holy Roman Emperor. And the first viceroy of New Spain was Antonio de Mendoza, who ruled from 1535 to 1549. The Spanish found in the New World, they found riches that they've never seen before, and they made use of the encomienda system, which means that the conquerors would own the land and labor of the native peoples they conquered. It is important to know that on paper, indigenous people were not technically slaves. However, their position in the Spanish caste pyramid, as well as the previously mentioned encomienda system, effectively just made them like slaves to the European. The economy of New Spain was mostly made of farming and mining for precious materials, and between the 16th and mid 17th century, more than 180 tons of gold would be taken to Europe from the Americas, as well as 16,000 tons of silver. And all of these riches made Spain one of the wealthiest and most powerful nations of its time, but would also create a momentary period of inflation due to the insane quantities of precious metals that would make themselves like less rare and therefore less valuable. To the left, we can see the greatest extent of the Spanish Empire. However, by the start of the 19th century, the Spanish Empire was already in decline, with many of the colonies believing they'd be better off ruling themselves. And the rise of a certain French general would start to break havoc on Europe, which would only worsen Spain's struggle to maintain power on their colonies. But that's a topic for another video. And these are my sources.